Welcome to A Styled Life, the podcast for purpose-led female founders and senior leaders ready to use style as a powerful tool for confidence, impact, and influence. I'm your host, Alex Standley, multi-award-winning personal stylist, speaker, and sustainable fashion consultant with 2 decades of experience in the fast-paced world of fashion. Join me as we redefine success from the inside out. This podcast isn't just about clothes. It's about personal power, purposeful style, and creating a life that aligns with your values. So whether you're running a business, leading a movement, or stepping into your next chapter, you're in the right place. Each week, we'll dive into the world of personal style, sustainability, female empowerment, and living with intention through real stories, expert insights, and plenty of inspiration. Welcome back to A Styled Life. I'm really excited this week to be joined by Priya Downes, founder and CEO of Nudea, the Fit First B Corp certified underwear brand. Priya started her career in banking, then spent over a decade in luxury with the likes of Chanel and Burberry. She's built a brand that has now fitted tens of thousands of women in underwear. I met Priya through the Women's Chapter Network, and she'll be joining us in September on the panel at our Style with Purpose event, which I'm very excited about. Welcome, Priya, to the podcast.
Alex, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really excited to delve into your background and everything about the brand. So I'd love to start with a bit about your background. So you trained as an actuary. So you spent years in data, pricing, merchandising, and then you built a brand about one of the most kind of personal, emotional things that a woman can put on. What was the pull towards fashion? And did you ever feel that you had to choose between the kind of more analytical side of yourself and the more creative side?
Actually, I mean, it's strange because I think if you break down kind of where I started and where I am today, it sounds absolutely mad. But when you break it down into the actual steps that led me here, it actually makes sense. So I can talk you through it. I obviously, having quite an analytical brain, quite data driven from my early career, I think I ended up working in that capacity at the World Bank. And it was at the World Bank that I really had exposure to things like sustainability and what that really meant. Environmental. I was exposed to all these amazing projects that the World Bank was doing around environment and poverty reduction, which is its mission.
Yeah.
And really amazing people who are experts in their field, doing incredible things, incredible work. And that was really inspiring. And I've always I've come from a background where I grew up in Kenya. So I've seen poverty firsthand. And so for me, I've always, in my heart and in my values growing up, I've always had at the back of my mind a sort of a charitable conscious to my career. I've always wanted to do something that had a bigger impact. And the World Bank was just, a phenomenal place to be for someone like me, because, everything you do has that impact.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky to end up, I was a young person at the World Bank, and there wasn't many people who didn't have grey hair. It's an organization where you kind of go as an expert. But youth energy is needed. And I think that I ended up being the chairwoman of the youth committee at the World Bank. And when I was doing that, I kind of saw things like fashion and music that resonate with the youth all over the world, not really being used as a vehicle to really communicate the importance of what they could do to really have an impact on the planet and people. I didn't really, I love music, but I couldn't think of, it wasn't really my thing, but I love fashion. And so I saw an opportunity to use that as a kind of a launch pad to really engage young people within the World Bank, but also people who were impacted by the World Bank. So all the young people around the world around how can we think about fashion and its impact on the environment and people. And the World Bank do so many projects in the area of apparel and textiles, including the World Bank was a pioneer for the Better Cotton Initiative. They started that with IKEA and H&M. They also do a lot of work with microfinancing, organic cotton farmers, and fair trade all around the world. So I was like, well, we should be talking about that, right?
Yeah.
We should be trying to PR what the World Bank is doing through those kind of conversations. And so I ended up launching the first fashion show at the World Bank. And that kind of got bigger and bigger. And then I ended up becoming this expert on, and I remember having a piece done on me in the Washington Post around, being this expert in sustainable fashion. And I felt completely like an imposter. I'm like, I don't know anything about sustainable. I've never worked in fashion. All I know is that, it has an impact. And that's when I really saw the gap. I was like, well, hang on. I've got this day job that I'm doing all this stuff with data and it's all great. But I don't love it. Clearly I found a passion, but there's a knowledge gap and I don't know anything about the industry. I don't know anything about fashion. I had to make clothes. So that's where I was like, right, I had that aha moment and realized I needed to move into the industry. So once I'd kind of realized that, I quickly kind of said, right, what's the best way for me to do this mid-career? And that was an MBA. So I did an MBA and that was an amazing experience in itself. And I think that I would recommend anybody who is kind of 20 something thinking about their next career move to do an MBA. But so I did an MBA and that really helped me network and meet lots of really interesting and smart people, but also really helped me kind of round out my toolkit. For example, marketing. I knew nothing about marketing. So it allowed me to take a marketing course. It allowed me to take, a sales course and a comms course and things like that. That wasn't in my CV, so to speak. And that, that gave me at least a launch pad to start looking for jobs in the luxury industry and the fashion industry. And then it was from there that it kind of led me into this world of fashion. And I really picked luxury because it goes back to what, I think we've spoken about this before, about this idea of buying less, buying better, right? And
definitely,
I couldn't reconcile myself with going to work for a fast fashion brand.
No.
And so luxury, it had to be luxury. And if I was going to learn fashion, I'd want to learn it from the best, where you do think about the fabrics you pick and all of that kind of stuff. And then, finding the right role with semantics. Like clearly I had a data brain. And so merchandising made the most sense because it allowed me to be close to product. It allowed me visibility from production to planning all the options to looking at sales. And I think that sort of broad scope allowed me to kind of use the best of my professional experience and the best of like what I wanted to do in terms of being close to product. And I think, in some ways I've always had a strong affinity to fashion on a personal level. And that's how it all began. And then when I had a great career at Burberry, sort of worked my way up and then reached a peak after kind of Angela Ahrendts left. And it was it just seemed like a natural moment to kind of start thinking about my next move. And, because I had my MBA, I had this entrepreneurial spirit in me. And I was like, well, why don't I start something? Having worked at the best luxury houses, I was like, well, I don't see why the world doesn't need another designer handbag or a designer dress brand. But I did see a huge gap in underwear because, for all the reasons I was saying, I think it's very overlooked. People don't value it. People don't think about it. And yet it has such an impact on how we look, how we feel, our health, and also the environment, because it's such a throwaway category. You don't consider buying it. So hence you buy it, you overbuy. And then when you overbuy, and then you don't wear it just gets thrown out. And so that bugged me. So I felt like, well, there's so much here that needs to be addressed. And that's when Nudea started. It really started from a passion of wanting to create basically the luxury you don't see, underwear that's really comfortable, that fits you well, that you're going to buy less of, but you buy better and you actually value. And that's when it was all born. And I launched the business right before COVID, and that's a whole journey in itself, but I'm sure we'll get to that. Yes. So that's how it all, I mean, yeah, as I said, it was just a sequence of different steps that led me to, and Nudea keeps leading me to different things now as well. So it's been I would say start of my business and this end of my career, or so far, is probably the best in terms of learning. You know, I completely value everything I had before that. But certainly nothing beats the learning you get when you start your own business.
No, absolutely not. I think it's, as much as anything else, it's that personal development journey that you're almost forced to go on because,
Yes.
you know, it's you, it's your brand, you're at the center of everything, and all the decisions and everything starts and stops with you. So I think that's definitely what I found. And certainly we've had that conversation a lot on this podcast around it really kind of exposes a lot and means that you do have to work on yourself as well as, you know, obviously working on the business as well. Is that something that you have found?
It is 100%. I think it's a real emotional roller coaster. I've also fundraised, and I think that is a whole level of unpacking in terms of emotional roller coasters, mental hurdles that you have to overcome. I would say that is so true. I think that, you know, when you start your own business, it's not 9 to 5.
No.
And I think that in itself shows you how much you need to commit from a emotional point of view, because you're carrying the weight of the business beyond 5 o'clock, you know, into your personal life, into your weekends, into your holidays, into your life with kids. And I think that I think you're kidding yourself. I think a lot of people who come to me and say, I'm starting a business, I'm doing it on the side. I'm like, how do you do that? I personally don't know how you do that, because you have your own business. And certainly for me, you know, I put 100%, 150% of myself into it. And the best businesses, like my business, I'd like to think, is because it's partly me. In terms of it's a reflection of my values and who I am. And I think that you can't really separate that.
No, I think it's so important as well. And I think especially if you are purpose-led and, you know, you obviously started your brand with that mission. And, you know, I don't think there is, well, there probably are actually, but I don't think there's many entrepreneurs that start a business without some kind of personal connection to something that they're wanting to fix in the world, or a problem that they have come across personally that they think, you know, they can do it in a better way, or the gap in the market, or any of those things. So it is that in its very nature is quite a personal mission.
Exactly. Yes.
So you can't separate the two. And I think to your point around having a side hustle, I think that grew in popularity a lot during the pandemic, and it was like such a boom in like online businesses. And I think that's become stronger and stronger with AI and all of those kind of developments. That's made it easier than ever to start a business. But I personally found that I started my business really similar timing to you. It was the end of 2019 when I had my daughter, and I did it part-time alongside my role as a buyer at Amazon when I first started, because I went back to work literally when the pandemic hit, sort of March, April 2020. And I went back part-time. So I was doing 3 days a week to begin with. And I was like, you know, it's fine. I can do both alongside each other. And then ended up having a 1-year-old at home with me because all the nurseries shut, and my husband was having to go out to work. And it was all just like complete baptism of fire. And I couldn't see clients in person because of, you know, everything that was happening. So, and I continued doing it part-time for about 3 years. And I think a big driver of that was because I wanted the security of the paycheck and the healthcare and the pension and having a young child and a mortgage and all of those things. But actually, when I look at how much progress I've made since I took the business full time, and, you know, how I've really been able to go after what I want to do and the people that I want to connect with and collaborate with and the rooms that I want to be in and all of that kind of stuff, I realize actually how much time I wasted sitting in the comfy chair trying to, you know, balance both, because actually I was kind of doing a full-time job in part-time hours, and I could never quite switch off from that job because it was very intense and obviously a very demanding, innovative, fast-paced environment. So I think it's very challenging to think that you can kind of do a side hustle and have, you know, whether it's part-time or full-time or whatever, there's always that pull on your attention. And
And I think, and I totally hear you, not everybody has the luxury to just, quit their job and start something and go, yeah, I'm going to take this whim and start my business, and I'm going to leave the security of, and I totally get that. And I think, I think, but you have to expect that if you do a side hustle, just like you experienced, it's never gonna, it's going to take longer, right? It's going to take longer for you to see the results that you want. And to some extent, I've heard people say, oh, well, it allows me to test proof of concept. I could do my side hustle. I can maybe, start selling some product. And if it does well, then I've got this, I feel a bit more confident about quitting my job. And I think that's good if it does well. But the problem is if it doesn't do well, or it doesn't hit the ground running, you're always going to question yourself and say, well, what if I had done it full time? And so you never really get the answer to your question about wanting to. So I think that it is definitely more difficult. And I personally would advise against it. Like if you wanted to start a business, particularly a product-led business or a business that's not service-led, like yourself, I would really urge people to think. I mean, I'm not saying this, I get you need the money, but and you need the income. If you can, try and engineer the business where you perhaps get someone else to run it for you while you have to work, or so that you can give it its full the attention it needs to really hit the ground running, as opposed to trying to do it over a slow burn, because I think you never really answer your question, and you'd always feel like, what if? So I think from a kind of, and as you say, it's just so difficult to separate yourself from a business like that. So it's better if you can just do it, and maybe if it's a side hustle, and, you can ask yourself, is it worth waiting? Like, is it worth waiting 6 months until maybe I've built up a bit more security, and, maybe I've done a bit more research, and then I launch it when I'm with a bit more confidence and I can quit my job, as opposed to just trying to start. I definitely would advise so many other options before trying to do a side hustle, because it's just really difficult.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to your experience of working in the fashion industry, you obviously worked for luxury brands, but did you still feel like you saw perhaps the worst side of fashion, in terms of, as much as luxury, as you said, is very intentional in terms of, fabrics and quality and craftsmanship and all of those beautiful things, there's also obviously the waste and the overproduction and the environmental impact. Despite being a luxury house, luxury brands aren't exempt from their impact, on the environment and everything else. Did you see that side of things when you were working in the industry? And was that part of your drive to create your own brand in a different way?
To some extent, yes, but also to some extent, no, because I think that, when I think about some of the fast fashion brands, and even know what I know now from some of those brands, I definitely think I'd be walking away from that kind of gobsmacked, the fabrics they use, the water pollution, the just the level of because they produce so much,
the sheer volume,
that actually the impact they have is enormous, right? So they may be using better cotton, but they're still using millions of gallons of water because of the volume they pump out. So I think I would have been absolutely shocked at the kind of level of impact. But with a luxury brand, it is, I was pleasantly surprised, for example, that a lot of the luxury houses have their own leather farms and things like that, so that they do value and they do care for their their animals, for example, and it's all done in an ethical way. And so from those kind of perspectives, you're actually like, they do some things well. And the fact that luxury is all about, particularly someone like Chanel, where it's all about exclusivity, they are very careful about the supply they put out there. So there's definitely some really good things that have come, that I've that I've learned from that part, and softened my, my sort of shock of the industry and its impact. But certainly, like, I mean, one example that comes to mind that I do think is still really quite scary is when I was at Burberry, it came out in the news that, and they became a bit of a scapegoat for it, but it wasn't really their fault, was the whole burning. So just burning, like, and I think the papers kind of made out that there was these mountains of handbags and raincoats being burned. I mean, it's not quite like that, but it's true to say that there's very little, when you're protecting your brand, and particularly a luxury brand, they do have to think very carefully about, what happens to seconds, what happens to markdown, and what happens to product. And so they are burning product, and that is shocking. Like I was kind of going, that is so bad on so many levels, and I do think that made me feel a bit like there's got to be a better way. Like there's got to be a better way than having to go down this route. Surely there's a recycling element. Surely there's an element of like, can you work with a charity? There must be something that doesn't involve burning product.
Yeah.
Even for a luxury brand.
Definitely.
I don't know the answer, but I think that it's really, that was quite sad for me. But
definitely,
I do think there's other things that they do quite well.
Yeah,
in some
absolutely.
ways. And I would love to see, like, one thing that I think I'm hoping they've adopted more is a resale market. If you do have, I mean, there's like Paige's route, for example, there must be a way that brands like Burberry or Chanel could think about partnering with, resellers and actually doing it in a way that's actually quite brand protecting, but not involving that environmental impact. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm hoping that the world has moved on since then.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because I think I was at the Good Clothes network event recently, and there was a panel with eBay and a couple of other people, and this was a topic that we got onto because we were talking about the fact that a lot of the luxury brands still don't want to be associated with the resale market, brands like Chanel, for example, because they feel like it devalues the brand and it allows access to people at a much lower price point. And we were kind of talking about the counter argument to that, with the side of things that it allows access to people whose income might be lower, at this point in time because they're in their 20s or whatever, but then they become loyal to the brand. And then when they're, higher up, or they're, further down their career earning more money, they then might become people that buy Chanel brand new, or they'll become loyal to the brand. And I think that's a real miss with the luxury brands. And for them, obviously, it's understandable that it's a lot about perception, and the brand, protecting the brand is really important. But I think from a sustainability point of view, and from almost like getting the next generation into these brands, because ultimately I think a lot of the people who invest in luxury can be 40 plus, or the older kind of end of the market, because they're the ones that have the disposable income. So it's almost like having access to the brands when you're younger allows for that kind of loyalty to develop over time. But I think eBay were kind of sharing that there's still some work to be done on the perception of resale and secondhand and all of those things. But I think, to your point, it's perhaps around less kind of like mass market options like, eBay and Vinted and things like that, and actually high quality, authenticated resale options like Phoenix and other brands that are trusted resellers for the luxury market, which make a lot more sense for that level of brand.
It works for watches.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
when you think about it, there's so many certified resellers of watches, or even certified sellers of new watches, right? And I think if it works for watches, we never hear of a fashion problem with watches.
No.
Right. And so I don't really see why luxury brands couldn't approach that in the same way.
Definitely.
Because there's definitely outlets where you can still work to kind of get rid of old stock, but in a considered way. And maybe, you know, it's an exclusive reseller. You only work with one reseller globally, or you only work with one reseller in one region to keep it controlled. But I do think there are ways, and I would like to think they maybe have moved on. I think that that horrible PR of the burning mountains may have shaken some of the brands to do something.
Definitely.
And also I think there is a lot around, is there something around tagging product?
Yeah.
That is like a seconds or end of line, so that you can track that customer when they buy, as you say, and work up the food chain. Because you're right. I think that particularly the younger customer today, you know, that hopefully their incomes will rise, and it should rise, right?
Yeah.
So what's so bad in having a 21-year-old buy your Chanel handbag at 70% off, and then, you know, 10 years later they actually come back and buy a full price one? I mean, I definitely see the merit in the argument in that, and it doesn't devalue Chanel in any way, right? So
I think also, I mean, I don't know if anything like this exists already, but I know it does in other countries. But I think there's the idea of places like Bicester Village and having something like that that's very much a kind of luxury shopping experience, but it's pre-loved rather than just like end of line, and incorporating that into something that is obviously more of a high-end experience that matches the level of those luxury brands, and, you know, making a curated shopping experience that still feels elevated, but essentially all the product that's there is pre-owned or end of life.
I love that.
Yeah.
I wish somebody would do that. That would be amazing.
Maybe that's my next project.
Yeah, that's great.
So moving on to fit, because I feel like this is such a big topic when it comes to underwear. And it's a conversation that I'm having constantly with my clients, because most of them haven't had a bra fitting for many, many years. You've said before that most women are wearing the wrong size and haven't been fitted in years. And that's definitely my experience. What do you think happens when something, you know, finally fits a woman properly? Because I feel like there's more to it than just, you know, the physical, it feels better and, you know, it's more comfortable and all of that kind of thing.
I think firstly, it's important to highlight that I think we women generally, like, I'm being very general here, don't value fit as much as they should across the board. And the amount of times I see people wearing poorly fitted dresses or dresses that don't fit them, and, you know, it's worth investing in a good tailor, whatever
I always say the same.
Exactly. And you're a stylist, you know this really well. And I actually worked in menswear. I didn't work in women's wear very much when I was at Burberry. And what I love about menswear is that men do value fit.
They do.
Right. So men aren't embarrassed about the label, you know, and what size they are.
No.
They would just buy what fits them, and then they'll buy it in 5 colors. Right. So, you know, when you think about the business of Burberry, you know, they would produce polos, and it was once somebody found the perfect polo, they'd just buy it in 10 different colors, right? And the simplicity of that is amazing to celebrate.
Yeah.
Whereas I remember my colleagues in women's wear were just fighting what it looked like. It doesn't matter if it doesn't have pockets. We don't need pockets. And I'm like, yeah, but pockets are very useful.
Yeah.
And so I think it's also changing the perception of actually fit and practicality is what is going to keep something in your wardrobe forever.
Absolutely.
Whereas buying something that doesn't fit you but just looks very pretty, you might wear once, but you're never going to wear it again. Definitely. And so I think that is that's so true for ready to wear. But it's even truer for bras.
Definitely.
And more truer for bras, because, you know, if you don't buy something if you buy something that doesn't fit you, you'll never wear it.
Yeah.
And I was that person. I would buy so many bras that didn't fit me, and I'd have this drawer full of bras I've worn once, or maybe worn for 10 seconds and just ripped off and gone, it doesn't fit me, and it just lies there. And I think that you have to think about that kind of consumption behavior and go, does that make sense for me? Like, or my wallet, or, you know, and then when you add in the level of the importance of a bra in terms of comfort, in breast health, skin health, back health, posture health, it's so important you get a bra that fits you.
Absolutely.
But when you think about also the way it makes you look, right? I think the second part of the question was around like, how does it affect the way you come across? Like, a good fitting bra makes you sit up properly, makes you actually less slouchy, and that makes a big difference in how you come across in your outerwear. Particularly for busty women, having a bra that helps you with forward projection can actually make you look slimmer rather than wider.
Definitely.
So there's so many benefits of a good fitting bra that are beyond just the comfort and health benefits. A good bra can make you look slimmer, can actually help minimize if you're somebody who's worried about your fuller bust. If you're somebody who's smaller bust but want a little bit of enhancement, that's where your bra can help. Some dresses do look better with a bit of cleavage. Bras help there. So there's so much benefit that bras give you to your outerwear. Definitely. Beyond just the comfort, but the appeal and the aesthetics are really important.
Absolutely.
And then that doesn't even get into things like bra no-nos, like straps that don't show, things like that, and knickers that have VPL. Choosing the right underwear can actually make the difference to how you look. I mean, how a dress looks when you have a good strapless bra, for example, or a racer back vest top. We're in the middle of summer right now. The amount of times I walk out and see women wearing vests and they've got straps showing, and I'm just like, if you just
I can help you.
Yeah, I can help you. Or, when you've got an amazing, slim kind of silhouetted dress and then you see a VPL, you just like, well, that can be easily solved by great underwear. And I don't think you can underestimate how ill-fitting underwear can be distracting, not just for you, but also for somebody you're sitting opposite. The amount of times that one of the best testimonials I ever had was a woman who told me that when she finally got the right bra from us and got fitted properly and everything, suddenly men stopped looking at her chest.
So interesting.
And actually talk to her face. And you're like, well, yeah,
that's
right.
Huge.
And I think that, people, I know we live in a world of 2026 and that those kind of things shouldn't happen anyway. But I think you can find that people do get distracted and do look at your kind of the strap showing under your vest and go, want to avoid all of that. You don't want that to be a conversation piece around the fact that you're wearing an ill-fitting bra. I mean, just the other day, I think we had a waitress who was quite busty and she had an awful fitted bra. And it became, I know we're in the business and we're a team of people that work at Nudea, so naturally be a topic of conversation. But it was unanimously, we all noticed, right? And I think that that's something that you don't want people to notice.
No, absolutely.
And I think that's why it is important that you do think about your underwear, because not only is it distracting for you if it's uncomfortable because you're constantly doing that and picking at your bra or whatever, and that's distracting for other people, but also people do notice.
Yeah. I think we really underestimate that, how we feel, in our underwear and our clothes, because it can completely change your confidence and how you're showing up. If, as you said, if you're constantly readjusting yourself, whether that's your underwear or your outerwear, and other people might not pick up on, the fact that it's your bra that's uncomfortable or, whatever it is, all they'll feel is that you're uncomfortable and that you're not, performing at your best. And I think there's so much to be said for that it's a benefit to you because of how you feel in yourself. And then it's also a benefit to how you're showing up and the results that you're getting and the opportunities you're attracting and all of those things that we just you would never associate that with your underwear. Essentially, you just think, I need to sort that out at some point one day. And then it's like 5 years down the line and you still haven't been for a bra fitting or done anything about it. And I think it's so often underestimated in terms of the impact that it can have on how you feel and on the way that you're performing. How do you find, even just in when you're out and about with the brand, that people are surprised in terms of the quality of the fabrics, or when they try things on, that it feels very different to other things that perhaps they've had before? Or what's the feedback that you get around the brand? Because you obviously put a lot of intention and thought behind the fit and the quality and the fabrics that are being used.
So yeah, and I think, and that's something that's actually quite hard to communicate online. And I think that bras particularly are a real challenge when you're trying to sell online.
Yeah.
Because particularly when you're trying to sell this idea of being your most comfortable best self, it's hard when you can't actually feel or try the product on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, D2C is one thing, but when we are out and about, as you say, and we are able to get product in front of people, get it on people, there's definitely aha, oh my God, I didn't know I could have a bra that felt like this, or
Felt this good.
And I think that's an incredible testimony. And every time somebody does that, I feel like this is why I do my job, right? This is why I, and that's why, not obviously it's great to sell a bra online, and I love that, but nothing beats that. And somebody's feeling and touching product. So I feel like that's always going to be the best way to sell and try product, and being able to feel the fabrics is hugely important. So I really value opportunities to get in front of people. And we do wholesale, where, we do sell to retailers, but because I'm not there, I don't see what people are feeling or thinking. And I only kind of get it at third hand, second hand even. But when I do events like we will be doing in September, I get a chance to actually speak to people and have them touch and feel the product, and I get to see those reactions live. That's such an amazing feeling.
Definitely.
And I do think people really feel the difference. They put something on and they go, gosh, this feels like I'm wearing nothing. And I'm like, great, that's how you should feel.
Yeah, it should be a second skin.
Absolutely. So I think, and that's interestingly, Nudea comes from two Latin words for new and dea, goddess. But also I like the fact that it's got nude in it, because that's how we want you to feel. But we also want you to feel like a new goddess. So you actually put it on and that you feel, the best you've ever been. And that, as you say, you can show up and forget about your underwear and be your best self. And I think that is the brand, and that's what we want you to feel. So
I love that.
So if that happens, I feel like my job is done.
We touched on earlier as well about the kind of perhaps throwaway nature of underwear. And I think I've definitely had this as a personal experience of, when I was younger, I would even shop in Primark for my underwear because it was just cheap. And, especially when I was at university and I didn't have very much money, it's like you go in and just get whatever is, I think even at one point there, thongs and pants and stuff were like £1 or something ridiculous like that. And I guess when you have got a lower disposable income, it's easy, it's affordable and whatever, but the fit was shocking. So it's kind of like, as I've aged, but also I guess through my experience of being a buyer and being, working very closely with garment technologists and recognizing the importance of fit. And especially when I worked for, it was such an important part of my role as a buyer as well, was making sure that the products were fit for purpose. And as you were saying earlier about the menswear side of things at Burberry, yes, fit was really important. And we spent a long time before we got to sort of a contract sales stage, before it was ready to go into production, making sure that the garments fit really well and that they had all of the practical elements to them, like, whether it was pockets on a pair of trousers or I don't know, like zip compartments on a handbag, and that the handbag had the right shoulder drop so it was comfortable to wear on your shoulder. And all of those considerations were really, really important. So I think that also made me more discerning as a consumer as well, because it was like, actually, this stuff is really important and it makes a huge amount of difference to how I feel. And so then I, in my own kind of personal life, would then invest more intentionally in things like my underwear and footwear and trousers and denim and things where the fit is really important. And I think that's the same message that obviously we're going to be talking about at the event in September. But why do you think that shift feels so hard. I was going to say hard, not necessarily hard for people, but it's just not something that people consider as being important.
It's a really, really good question. I think I don't know. I don't know what I feel like, you know, no matter how much you preach and you try and teach people about, you know, buy better, buy less, and actually mathematically it works out the same.
Definitely.
Or actually better, right? If you as you know, you buy cheaper now, you will end up buying it again.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I don't know why that math doesn't resonate. I think it's just behavioral psychology. People think about the now.
Yeah, the need in the moment.
The need today versus sort of planning for the future.
Mm.
And I think that it just has to be that. I think it's just that kind of, you know, I'm thinking about my pennies today, not my pennies tomorrow. And I feel like that's a huge shift of mindset to get people thinking about, you know, their future pocket. And it's interesting because one of my other passions is financial literacy amongst women and investment and things like that. And it is interesting because men are a lot better, just historically and even now still, looking at investing for the future. So they will, you know, they're more likely to take a risk today and say, you know, invest in shares, invest in businesses, and they're more likely to be the kind of household, you know, finance manager kind of thing. And why is that? And, you know, I've had lots and lots of conversations with people, and I'm lucky because, you know, I come from a very financial literal background, and you know, I do have a share portfolio, and I do invest in shares, and I do you know, I do invest in startups. I'm an angel investor. So I do think there's a little bit of, and that also I think to some extent affects men's shopping behavior, because they tend to kind of go out and buy, and they'll sort of buy what they need, and then they'll and it's less impulse buying, and it's sort of a bit more thoughtful. And I don't know why women in general have that sort of it's going to take a lot of education to sort of change that. And I do think it's education. I think particularly around the financial literacy, there is a literacy element. People just don't have the education or understanding to know what it is to invest for the future. But I think that it's the same psychological behavior that drives this need to impulse buy today, because they think it's cheaper and better than it is to actually buy spend a bit more now for the payoff later, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But I think there's so much to this conversation, because I think a lot of the behavior of women is driven by societal conditioning. And I think there's a lot less pressure. And influence, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot less pressure on men in terms of the way that they look and, you know, keeping up with trends. And menswear generally is a lot more timeless. And actually, my husband is quite into, you know, his clothes and the way that he dresses and all that kind of stuff. And he actually gets frustrated by that because he wants something a bit different. And he always says to me, like, we've got an amazing boutique local to us in St Albans called The Dressing Room. And
I know that one well. Yeah, it's a
amazing.
Great one. Yeah.
And he always says, I wish there was an equivalent for men, because he walks into, you know, the equivalents for men that we have. And he's like, everything's navy and like grey, and it's just really dull, and I just want something that's a bit more quirky and a bit more different. And I think for women, there's so much tied up in, you know, beauty standards and the way that we look and the way that we present ourselves, and not aging, and, you know, keeping
and
ourselves.
Also the whole social acceptance too. I think, like, women are a lot more driven by, what are my friends doing? What am I seeing? You know, and whereas I think men are less about keeping up appearances as well, right?
Yeah. So, and I guess from a financial point of view as well, you know, it's not that long ago that women weren't allowed to have their own bank accounts or credit cards. And
yes, that's true. Yeah, it's just
by men. So I think we've made so much progress over the last, you know, 50 years or so, but there's still so much more to do. And I think, as you said, it often does tend to be that the man is the one that manages the finances. And I think the more and more that we shift that and women get more opportunities to own things like that, then hopefully all of this will be a knock-on effect as to how that then transpires into our day-to-day decisions, into our wealth mindset, into everything. Because I think it's all interconnected.
100%. I think, you know, I've been to a couple of talks about alternative asset classes, and men are, you know, historically been the people that would invest in art and wine and watches less than women do. And I think it's really interesting because that's also a lifestyle too, right? So a lot of men who invest in Rolexes and, you know, they wear them, right? They wear them is something that they enjoy, but they also invest in it and look at it as a financial investment, right? And I think there's to some extent that's coming towards like Hermes handbags. Right. Women are looking at Hermes handbags and going, this is an investment piece that I can buy today, wear it, and then at some point it will be valued at something, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think it is slowly coming through, right, in that people are starting to think about things from a financial point of view and like resale value point of view too. With the rise of these platforms like Vestiaire Collective, right? People are now going, well, if I buy a handbag today, I'll wear it for 5 years and then I can resell it. So I think hopefully it will start to trickle down into more of our purchases.
Definitely.
And obviously not everything can be resold and not everything has a resale value, but certainly that mindset of thinking about when you make a purchase and thinking about the kind of financial lifespan of it in terms of like what, you know, what's my cost per wear, what's my value, and what will I do at the end of it is actually a massive step forward.
Definitely.
In terms of thinking, right? And I think if we all thought a little bit about like that in everything we bought, the world would be a better place because we would just buy less, right?
I think one of the most popular solo episodes that I've done of the podcast was one on cost per wear.
Yeah.
Because I think I wrongly assume sometimes that people already know this stuff because it's so inherent to me from my background and from what I do. And so when I was actually creating the podcast episode, I was a bit like, is this a bit basic because people know this stuff? But actually it really resonated with people and it's one of the most listened to episodes. And so I think, as you said, education is really important and it's a constant reminder to myself that I need to keep sharing these things and talking about them because people, even if they've heard it before, sometimes you need to hear things, you know, said differently or said multiple times before you actually change your behavior or how you're thinking about things.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, I don't think anybody should be sad about an impulse buy. We all can do that from time to time. But it is harder because you're fighting impulse buy like data points all the time. You know, you've got your influencers on your Instagram, you know, showing you things. You've got ads being served to you all the time. So it is hard, you know, and even for someone like me who really makes considered purchases, or I like to think I make considered purchases, I do have weak moments. You know, I'll see an influencer, I'm like, oh, that looks great. And I, you know, don't even split second it's in my car, right? So we all do it. And I think we're all fighting that and we're all susceptible to it. But yeah, I think I always say to my clients as well, I think if 80% of the time you're investing, you know, intentionally into your wardrobe, then you've still got 20% to play with. That's like the icing on top of the cake. And for those moments where you do see something and you just fall in love with it and it's like, I've got to have that. And that's fine. Like nobody's saying that you can't, you know, enjoy your 100%. Purchasing and stuff like that. It's just, I think, you know, I know this very well from having worked for Amazon for the amount of time that I did, that, you know, we're all encouraged to have that next day, need it, want it, get it tomorrow kind of thing. And we don't always need to do that. Like, and there is a real psychological benefit to waiting for something that you've kind of lusted after and you've saved up for it, and it means so much more when you actually get it, and it feels different when you wear it because it feels special. And I think
we need to get back to some of that connection, you know, emotionally and psychologically to what we're buying as well, because I think that's really important.
100%. And I think Amazon's got a lot to blame for that.
Yeah. But it's also great if you're in need of something,
it's true.
Know, desperately at the last
minute. Really convenient. It's really convenient.
I'd love to finish with our quickfire questions about your own wardrobe, which I'm very excited to hear about. What's the one item of clothing in your wardrobe that you love the most and why?
I have an old shirt I got from Burberry, a white shirt, just a very good quality poplin white shirt that I've worn to death and is still going strong. And I think that a white shirt is an absolute staple in anybody's wardrobe.
I love that. Such a good one. If we opened your wardrobe right now, what would we find way too much of?
Way too many trench coats, jackets and coats.
I love that. I think it's funny the patterns that you see in people's wardrobes, but I'm a sucker for jackets and coats and things like that because I think they're such an amazing kind of finishing piece to an outfit, and it's something that I've always been very drawn to. I mean, it was one of the first categories that I worked on as a buyer as well, so I think that kind of influences my purchases, but I think it's such a good one for quality investment pieces as well.
And I think also I just made out like a bandit from all the sample sales.
I love that.
So I just did really well with it and have just hung on to it all, which is great, but there's no way I can wear them all.
No. I'm sure that you can hand them down as well.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. And I have resold a lot of them too. So
amazing. And what's an outfit or a trend that you look back on and think, I really regret that, and why?
Oh gosh. What, you talking about in my youth maybe? Or just
possibly, anything. Yeah.
Velour tracksuits.
That's been said before. Definitely is a popular one. That juicy couture kind of age.
Yes, God. I hope that never comes back.
Yeah.
Yes, velour tracksuits.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I've absolutely loved this conversation. And I know that so many people will be inspired by a lot of your story and what you've shared. And I would love people to come along and hear more from you on the 24th of September when we're live in the room as well. I think there's nothing like that kind of in-person connection. And like you said, being able to touch and feel the product in person as well is a really special part of the experience. Where is the best place for people to connect with you and buy the product and all of those things?
So you can, the best place to buy a product is online at Nudea.com. So that's Nudea.com. We also sell through John Lewis. And if you're listening from another country, we sell through Nordstrom, through Feed People. So you can find us internationally as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah. I'll share all of the links to your socials and things in the show notes as well.
Yeah. And also, sorry, I should have said, if you want to contact me, my email is very simple. It's my name at Nudea.com. I'm very open to people emailing me with questions about my business or reaching out for some advice. Please don't be shy. Send me a quick email.
I love that. Thank you so much.
No worries. It was so nice to chat to you. And I really look forward to the event in September.
Me too. I'm excited.
Yeah, great.
Thank you for tuning in to A Styled Life. If today's episode resonated, the best way to support the show is to share it with another trailblazer or leave a quick review. And if you're ready to align your style with your next level of impact, head to the show notes to book your free style strategy call. Because when your style aligns with your purpose, the world takes notice.